Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, and it's just me. And although we just did an episode about kids and no discipline in schools and them having no fucking respect, I'm going to do a back-to-back of something very similar, but much more egregious.
Oh, really?
I'm speaking, of course, about the video that's making the rounds of the kid in Florida that beat the living shit out of that female school employee that allegedly took away his Nintendo Switch. Which, by the way, you don't see in the video, and there's no Nintendo Switch anywhere in sight during it. But, yeah, that was the claim. And it's a shocking video to see. This kid has zero care for this woman's safety and seemingly no remorse when the cops are handcuffing him. I feel that way because he just kind of stands up and is like, whatever, and puts his hands behind his back. But initial reports were that he said something to the effect of, I don't have time for this, man. I got things to do. Like he could give a fuck less about what just happened and doesn't think he needs to go away and be punished for this by being locked away in jail. I mean, I can keep telling you about it, or you can take a second to pause this episode and then go seek it out yourself if you haven't seen it yet. It's well worth the watch, and it's not very hard to find.
You don't say.
Now, if you were to Google student beats up teacher Florida, you will get this video. If you do student beats up teacher over Nintendo Switch, you'll absolutely get this video. And here's the story. Some kid, and he's 17. And the story is that this paraprofessional, or teaching aide, whatever you want to call her, took away this kid's Nintendo Switch. And then he got pissed, and he followed her out to some common area. And he walks up behind her, she turns around, he basically picks this bitch up and launches her, and she hits the ground like a fucking rag doll, and is immediately rendered unconscious. Then, he stomps on her, almost trips over her legs, kneels down, and begins repeatedly punching her in the back, near the ribs and spine. Then he turns his attention to the back of her skull, and people are walking up like, oh my god, what the fuck is happening? And they're trying to pull this kid off of her. And he continues to try to kick at her, again, and again, and again, like 3, 4, 5 fucking times once these other adults tried to stop him. The boy in question, his name is Brendan Depa, or Depa. Who cares? He's a piece of shit. He's being named for the first time because the 7th Judicial Court of Florida ruled that he would be transferred to adult court for these charges, and he's currently being held on $1 million bond, according to the court documents. He's facing an aggravated battery charge, which is a felony, after he allegedly attacked Joan Natick, 57, at Matanzas High School in Palm Coast, Florida on February 21st. This woman is not very big. She's not very muscular. She's 57 fucking years old. She's got more days behind her than in front of her, statistically speaking. And this kid, who it's not really fair to call him that because he's 6'6" and 270 fucking pounds roughly. You see him, that's a big motherfucker.
That is correct.
And when I say he picked her up and launched her, she caught some air. I mean, he didn't like fucking javelin toss this bitch, but she got knocked the fuck out. But when you look at the video, no joke, 5 other adults try to pull this fucking kid off of her, and he doesn't want to stop. So there's no telling how far this would have gone if they wouldn't have been there to intervene. He clearly has some anger issues and something wrong with his brain. And it's funny because it came out that this kid was charged with battery, or assault, depending upon what state you're in, 3 times in 2019 alone. And he had previously been forced to complete a Department of Juvenile Justice program, which it doesn't say what it was, but I'm just going to assume that it was some sort of anger management, and then they could put him in the diversion program to keep him from getting locked up again. It happens all the time. It's nothing new, and it's not unique to Florida or Minnesota where I'm at. But let's restate that this kid, 6'6", 270.
God damn!
Roughly the size of a professional wrestler. Like Dustin Rhodes, a.k.a. Goldust, or Luchasaurus, or back in the day, DDP. Hulk Hogan was roughly that size, except he used to be 6'8" and that weight. So, big motherfucker. He's also pretty much on par in size with former Vikings quarterback Dante Culpepper, for fuck's sakes. So imagine a 57-year-old skinny little woman being thumped by that kid.
Are you picturing it? I'm picturing it.
One facet of this I have not yet brought up is that the kid is black and she is white. So I know there's going to be people that are going to totally shit their pants over the fact that he's being graduated up to adult court. But the state attorney's office says that Depa did actually and intentionally touch or strike the victim against the will of them, and in doing so used a deadly weapon and or intentionally or knowingly caused great bodily harm, permanent disability, or permanent disfigurement. We're going to use great bodily harm because I'm willing to bet she's got some bruised, if not broken, ribs from taking those punches. And God knows if she's got a concussion or not. I have to assume so from having her head sandwiched between the fucking floor of the school and this kid's fist like 7 or 8 fucking times. Kid's a fucking animal. And yes, they bumped his charges up to adult court because he's 17, he's almost a legal adult, and he's got a history, so he's a repeat offender. So that makes sense. Now, one thing they did do that might be questionable to some is that he has $1 million bail. And some people might call that excessive, and I can see why they would say that, because he's a kid, but he's got a history. And if he gets out, who's to say he won't go after that same paraprofessional again to finish the job because he's pissed off he got in trouble? We don't know. I mean, he got arrested 3 times in 2019 for various assaults of other people. So it stands to reason that he doesn't learn his lesson and he just doesn't care about other people's feelings or safety or boundaries. He's probably going to do something, and it's not going to be good. And additionally, the court stated he's not to contact her, but no protection order is going to stop somebody if they want to get to you bad enough. However, there's another angle to this, and I will say it for the sake of argument. What if, hypothetically, vigilante justice here, this kid gets out and somebody beats the piss out of him or guns him down and then turns him into a fucking martyr, which he never should be in a million years because of what he did to this woman. But it could happen. This is America. There's guns everywhere, and there is no shortage of people in this country with an axe to grind in situations like these looking to partake in some street justice, like they're fucking Rorschach from the goddamn Watchmen. Frankly, I would like to see him get repeatedly caned or beaten with a fucking canoe paddle upside the face for what he did to her. He has it fucking coming. I don't care. And yes, he's black and she's white, but if the races were reversed, I'd have no difference in feeling if one of them was Latino or Asian. Race is of the least fucking important aspect of this whatsoever, but there's always going to be the bleeding hearts that are going to cry foul and say, oh, show mercy on this kid because he's less fortunate and disenfranchised. Maybe he grew up dirt floor poor and he doesn't have a father figure around and he doesn't have someone to guide him and teach him properly. Now, so far, the liberal media has yet to release his 3rd grade photo and try to portray him as this big, huggable, misunderstood teddy bear, but give it a few days. And I read something before I started recording this where the victim stated, I don't know where this info is coming out about the Nintendo Switch. There was no Nintendo Switch. I didn't take anything away from him. It's all misinformation. It feels like somebody's telling her to say that because some genius mental health advocate trying to stick up for the kid made comments about the teacher saying, oh, taking away the student's gaming device may have triggered him. Yeah, because that's the hot take, that she shouldn't have upset him and she basically had it coming, is kind of how that comes off, even though you probably didn't intend it that way, but now it comes across as victim blaming. You dumb fuck. No matter how many times these things happen and how bad the assailant is or looks from their past behavior, there's always 1 or 2 of these motherfuckers that are these bleeding hearts that want to try to humanize the aggressor, and I'm sick of it. Now, those of us that live in reality would know this kid's fucked up in the head and he doesn't care. So he's going to grow up to be an adult who doesn't care because it has been 3.5 years since he fucking offended last and he's doing it again. Kid hasn't changed. Maybe he kept it in check, or maybe he just did stuff that wasn't bad enough to get arrested, or maybe he didn't get caught. I'm going to say between 2019 and now, he's probably put his hands on somebody else. If we're playing the averages, it seems to be his modus operandi here. So again, I don't care if he's poor. I don't care if you think the criminal justice system is racist or rigged against black young men. He fucking beat someone. He deserves to pay. And that penalty could be up to 30 years of confinement. Do I think he's going to get the full 3 decades? No. But he's no stranger to battery and assault and hurting people. So I feel like the judge is going to use that as the guiding principle. Plus, you watch the video, and once he was pulled off her, he kept going after her. So who's to say that if they didn't stop him, he wouldn't have killed her? By punching her so many times in the head, she's brain damaged or brain dead, or he fucking, because it's a rabbit punch, it separates her fucking brain stem from her spinal cord and kills her that way.
Ow. Ow.
So all of that added together means that this little shit streak needs to fucking go away for a long time. And I'll even take it a step further. People that commit heinous crimes like this, we don't need them in society. So your pick then becomes, we can stick them on an island somewhere in a prison colony and let them fucking devour each other. Or just stick him in a giant meat grinder. Be done with it. Save all the money of housing him where he gets to hang out with his buddies and act like a tough guy and join a prison gang and have a worthless existence. Now, he's not the only kid to go after a teacher. It happens all the time. I just watched another video after this on dailymail.com from the UK where a kid knocked out a fucking teacher in Milwaukee. Again, white teacher, black kid. Neither here nor there. I'm just telling you. It was an older white teacher, and the kid that beat him up wasn't very big, but he was 16. And I'm going to ballpark it that they were both like 6 feet tall or something. They weren't evenly matched because the teacher was a bigger guy, but he kept his composure as this kid got in his face, and the kid swung on him and then kept swinging on him. And the other kids in the class are filming it and laughing about it. So again, kids don't care. It's not about reaching them. It's not about incentivizing them to behave. You don't give any sort of treat or benefit to someone that exudes negative or improper behavior, especially violent behavior. You don't hug a thug. I will never be someone that advocates for that horse shit. It's fucking brain dead and a waste of time.
It's frustrating.
These kids are in DGAF mode. They do not give a fuck. And that's just how they are. Because society is cutthroat. And they're all little sociopaths with phones in their hand. And they all want to seem like Billy Badass. It's like the Wild fucking West in schools. And this shit's going to keep happening until they really throw the book at one of these kids. I mean, seriously, fucking do something that shocks and awes people and say, you know what? It's about fucking time we turn the tide and just crucify one of these little shitbirds for doing this so it discourages others. Because you will never get anyone to respect the rules unless they fear the fucking consequences, and sending him home on an in-school suspension or expelling him, it's not going to do anything. Locking him away is just wasting his life, but it doesn't seem like he has any interest in improving. However, I like to play devil's advocate and speak on the converse of things. What if he goes away and he does 10 years and he gets out and he's a changed man? What if while he's in there, some OG that's doing life pulls him aside, talks to him, gets through to him, and then the kid decides, oh my God, I need to atone for all I've done, and he gets out, he gets a job, he makes amends, and lives a semi-productive life. It could happen. But the odds are greater in favor that he's never going to change and he's just going to waste away in prison and turn into an even bigger piece of shit where the criminals teach each other how to be better criminals. It's sad, but it's true. And people need to accept that. Because once you let go of the thought process that every child is precious and everybody who fucks up can be saved and everyone deserves a second chance, there are some crimes that are unforgivable and we have no use for you. Specifically, if you're a large male and you beat the shit out of a defenseless female when she's on the ground unconscious, and then you continue to try to get back at her to continue beating her because you don't feel like you've taught her enough of a lesson yet. So let's just get rid of him and people like him. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.